What if everything you were taught about God was designed not to free you but to control you? What if the divine being described in ancient texts bears no resemblance to the true nature of existence itself? For centuries, humanity has knelt before an image of God, constructed by human hands, shaped by political necessity, refined by institutional power, and presented as ultimate truth. But is this God real, or merely a reflection of human desire for authority dressed in celestial robes? Consider this carefully. Why would an infinite, perfect being demand worship? Why would the source of all existence require temples, rituals, and intermediaries? Why would ultimate reality need priests to interpret its will? These questions are not blasphemy. They are the beginning of genuine understanding. They are the questions that Baruch Spinoza dared to ask in the 17th century. Questions that cost him everything. Questions that revealed a truth so threatening to established power that he was cast out, cursed, and condemned to philosophical exile. The God you were taught to fear is not the God that exists. The divine being who commands obedience, who punishes dissent, who operates through reward and vengeance, this is not the infinite substance that constitutes reality. This is a human invention, a cosmic monarch modeled after earthly kings, a projection of political hierarchy onto the fabric of existence itself. And recognizing this distinction is not the path to atheism. It is the path to genuine knowledge of what truly exists beyond the shadows of human imagination. Think about the nature of the biblical God for a moment. This being becomes angry, jealous, regretful. This being changes its mind, makes bargains, seeks praise. This being chooses certain people over others, favors one nation above all nations, intervenes in battles, demands specific behaviors, prohibits certain foods and actions. Does this sound like infinite perfection? Or does this sound remarkably like a powerful human being? Does this resemble the eternal source of all existence? Or does this more closely match the psychology of ancient tribal leaders who needed divine justification for their earthly commands? Spinoza understood what many refuse to accept. The God of Scripture is not the God of nature. The God described in religious texts is a character in human drama, shaped by human concerns, limited by human imagination. The true divine, what Spinoza called God or nature, is not a being at all. It is being itself. It is the infinite substance of which all things are expressions, the eternal necessity that governs existence without intention, purpose, or consciousness, as humans understand these terms. This is not comfortable knowledge. It offers no personal salvation, no special destiny, no cosmic parent watching over you with concern. It provides no afterlife reward for obedience, no eternal punishment for transgression. It removes the comforting fiction that the universe cares about your individual choices, that your actions matter to some supreme consciousness, keeping accounts. But what it offers instead is something far more profound: freedom from spiritual slavery, liberation from the tyranny of imaginary divine commands, and the possibility of understanding reality as it actually exists, rather than as you wish it to be. The Church understood the danger of this knowledge immediately. When Spinoza published his ideas, religious authorities across denominations united in condemnation. Christians, Jews, Muslims, all agreed on one thing: this man must be silenced. His books were banned, his name became synonymous with atheism and heresy, his philosophy was considered the most dangerous thought in Europe. But why such unified horror? What truth was so threatening that it required complete suppression? The answer is simple. Spinoza revealed that religious institutions have no special access to divine truth. He demonstrated that priests, rabbis, ministers, imams, none possess unique knowledge of God's will. He showed that Scripture is human writing, shaped by historical context, reflecting cultural assumptions, containing contradictions and inconsistencies that reveal human authorship rather than divine dictation. He proved that morality does not require divine command, that ethics can be grounded in reason and nature, that humans do not need threats of eternal punishment to understand right action. This knowledge destroys the foundation of religious authority. If God is not a cosmic lawgiver, then religious law has no divine mandate. If Scripture is human interpretation rather than divine revelation, then institutional claims to exclusive truth collapse. If morality comes from understanding nature rather than obeying commands, then the entire structure of spiritual hierarchy becomes unnecessary. The priest becomes obsolete. The church loses its power. The believer becomes free. But freedom is terrifying. It means responsibility. It means accepting that no cosmic father will rescue you from consequences. No divine plan guarantees meaning. No supernatural force ensures justice. It means recognizing that you exist as one temporary expression of infinite nature, that your consciousness is a brief flowering of eternal substance, that your individual concerns hold no special significance in the vast scope of existence. This truth is harsh. It offers no consolation, but it is true. Consider what you actually know rather than what you believe. You know that nature operates according to consistent patterns. You know that events have causes. You know that the universe does not suspend its operations to grant wishes or answer prayers. You know that good people suffer and cruel people prosper without cosmic intervention. You know that natural disasters kill indiscriminately, that diseases strike the faithful and unfaithful alike, that fortune and misfortune distribute themselves without regard to virtue or piety. This is what you actually observe. This is reality unfiltered by comforting interpretation. Now consider what you were taught to believe. You were taught that a personal God intervenes in the world, that prayers are heard and sometimes answered, that justice ultimately prevails, that the righteous are rewarded and the wicked punished, that suffering has purpose, that death is not final. But where is the evidence for these claims? Where can you observe divine intervention that cannot be explained by natural causes? Where can you witness supernatural action that cannot be reduced to human interpretation of ordinary events? The honest answer is nowhere. What you observe is nature operating according to its own necessity. What you observe is cause and effect, pattern and repetition, the eternal dance of matter and energy following laws that require no divine consciousness to enforce them. What you observe is existence without intention, being without purpose, reality that simply is, without needing justification or explanation beyond itself. This is what Spinoza saw with absolute clarity. God and nature are identical. There is no supernatural realm separate from the natural world. There is no divine being standing outside creation, manipulating events according to inscrutable will. There is only the infinite substance expressing itself in infinite ways, the eternal necessity manifesting as everything that exists. You are not separate from this divine substance. You are a temporary mode of its expression. Your thoughts are divine thoughts. Your actions are divine actions. But so are the thoughts and actions of every other being. Nothing is special. Everything is sacred. There is no hierarchy in nature, no chosen people, no favored souls. The biblical God, in contrast, is all about hierarchy. This God creates levels of being, establishes rules, sorts humanity into categories of clean and unclean, chosen and rejected, saved and damned. This God operates exactly like a human political authority, demanding loyalty, punishing rebellion, rewarding obedience. This God is clearly a projection of human social structures onto cosmic scale. This God serves human purposes, particularly the purposes of those who claim to speak on divine behalf. Think about who benefits from belief in the biblical God. Who gains power from the claim that this deity has special requirements, specific commands, chosen interpreters? The answer is obvious: religious authorities. Those who claim exclusive access to divine will, who position themselves as necessary intermediaries between humanity and God, who demand obedience to interpretations that conveniently support existing power structures. The biblical God is a perfect tool for social control, a cosmic enforcement mechanism for human hierarchy. Spinoza recognized this political function of religion and analyzed it ruthlessly. He showed how religious authorities use fear and hope to manipulate populations, how they exploit human anxiety about death and meaning to maintain power, how they present interpretation as revelation and human tradition as divine command. He demonstrated that theology is politics dressed in spiritual language, that religious law is social control justified by imaginary divine will, that faith is often simply the absence of critical thinking. This is why religious institutions fought so desperately against Spinoza's philosophy. He did not merely question specific doctrines, he revealed the fundamental mechanism by which religious power operates. He showed that once you understand God as nature rather than as supernatural monarch, the entire edifice of religious authority collapses. You no longer need priests to interpret divine will because there is no will to interpret. You no longer need scripture to reveal God's commands because God does not command. You no longer need institutions to mediate between yourself and the divine because you are already an expression of divine substance. This knowledge is liberation. It frees you from spiritual dependence, from the endless anxiety of trying to please an imaginary cosmic authority, from the guilt imposed by religious systems that declare natural human desires sinful. It allows you to understand yourself, not as a fallen creature requiring salvation, but as a natural being whose flourishing comes from understanding and aligning with your own nature. It permits you to seek genuine knowledge rather than comforting belief, to pursue understanding rather than faith, to build ethics on reason rather than obedience. But this liberation requires courage. It demands that you abandon comfortable fictions, that you face existence without supernatural safety nets, that you accept responsibility for creating meaning rather than discovering it inscribed in cosmic purpose. It asks you to think for yourself rather than accepting tradition, to question authority rather than submitting to it, to seek truth even when truth offers no consolation. Not everyone can bear this freedom. Most prefer the slavery of comforting belief to the responsibility of genuine knowledge. Yet consider what you gain by accepting this difficult truth. You gain intellectual integrity, the ability to align your beliefs with evidence rather than forcing evidence to conform to belief. You gain moral autonomy, the capacity to determine right action through reason rather than following commands you cannot question. You gain psychological freedom, release from the tyranny of imaginary divine surveillance and judgment. You gain the possibility of genuine understanding rather than mere obedience disguised as faith. The true God, the God that actually exists, asks nothing of you, requires no worship, expects no obedience, offers no rewards, threatens no punishments. This God simply is, the infinite substance eternally expressing itself in all forms of existence. Understanding this God means understanding nature, studying the patterns by which existence operates, grasping the necessity that governs all things. This is not a personal relationship with a cosmic parent. This is intellectual comprehension of reality itself. This understanding reveals that the Bible, like all sacred texts, is human literature, valuable as history, fascinating as mythology, profound in parts as ethical reflection, but not divine revelation. The stories of creation, the accounts of miracles, the descriptions of divine intervention. These are human attempts to make sense of existence, to find meaning in experience, to establish social order through cosmic justification. They reflect the understanding and concerns of ancient peoples, not the eternal truth of infinite substance. Recognizing this does not diminish the Bible's value as human achievement. The ethical insights of the prophets, the wisdom of the Psalms, the philosophical depth of certain passages, these remain significant as products of human thought. But they must be understood as human products, subject to all the limitations, biases, and errors that characterize human understanding. They cannot be treated as perfect divine communication. They cannot be used to justify claims about God's nature or demands. They are evidence of how humans have imagined the divine, not evidence of what the divine actually is. Spinoza approached Scripture with this clear understanding. He read the Bible as literature, analyzing its composition, identifying its contradictions, explaining its historical context. He showed that many supposedly divine commands were clearly human laws designed for specific social circumstances. He demonstrated that miracles, when examined rationally, are either natural events misunderstood or literary inventions serving narrative purposes. He proved that prophecy is human interpretation, not supernatural communication. He revealed that Scripture itself, when read carefully and honestly, provides evidence against the claim of divine authorship. This critical approach to sacred text was revolutionary. Before Spinoza, Questioning Scripture's divine origin was unthinkable in Western culture. After Spinoza, biblical criticism became possible, eventually developing into the modern scholarly study of religious texts. He opened the door to examining the Bible as what it actually is, a collection of human writings reflecting ancient understandings, shaped by cultural contexts, containing valuable insights alongside outdated ideas and factual errors. But the deeper truth Spinoza revealed goes beyond scriptural criticism. He showed that the very concept of a personal God who reveals truth through special communications to chosen individuals contradicts the nature of infinite substance. If God is truly infinite, truly perfect, truly eternal, then God cannot have intentions, cannot make choices, cannot act at some times and not others. Intention requires lack, choosing requires alternatives, acting in time requires change. None of these apply to infinite perfection. Therefore, the biblical God who intends, chooses, and acts is not the true God. This God is a human conception, limited by human categories of thought. The true God, the God identical with nature, operates according to absolute necessity. Everything that exists must exist exactly as it does. Everything that happens must happen exactly as it does. There is no possibility for things to be otherwise, because infinite substance expresses itself according to its own eternal nature, and this nature is fixed and unchangeable. This means there is no divine plan that could have been different, no cosmic purpose that events might fail to fulfill, no supernatural will that governs reality. There is only nature being itself, existence expressing its own necessity. This deterministic vision disturbs most people. It seems to eliminate freedom, to reduce humans to mere machines, to make morality meaningless. But Spinoza argued that genuine freedom comes precisely from understanding necessity. When you understand why things must be as they are, when you grasp the causes that determine events, you achieve freedom through knowledge. You are no longer buffeted by passions you don't understand, controlled by desires whose origins you cannot trace, enslaved by reactions you cannot explain. You become free by understanding your own nature and aligning with it. This freedom through understanding is utterly different from the freedom promised by religion. Religious freedom is obedience to divine commands, submission to God's will, alignment with supernatural purposes. It is freedom in name only, actually a form of spiritual slavery that requires constant vigilance to suppress natural desires labeled sinful. Spinoza's freedom is genuine autonomy, achieved through self-knowledge, the liberation that comes from understanding yourself as a natural being, whose flourishing follows from expressing your own nature rather than conforming to imaginary divine requirements. Consider how religious morality operates. It declares certain actions good because God commands them, other actions evil because God forbids them. Morality becomes arbitrary divine preference enforced by supernatural reward and punishment. There is no internal logic to religious ethics beyond obedience to authority. Murder is wrong not because it harms others and violates human nature, but because God said so. Charity is good not because it promotes human flourishing, but because God commanded it. This reduces ethics to cosmic authoritarianism. Spinoza's ethics, in contrast, are grounded in understanding human nature and what genuinely promotes human flourishing. Actions are good when they enhance our power of existence, increase our capacity for understanding, strengthen our ability to act according to reason rather than passion. Actions are evil when they diminish our power, cloud our understanding, subject us to irrational passions. This morality requires no divine commands. It emerges from clear comprehension of what humans are and what genuinely serves human thriving. This natural ethics is far more robust than religious morality because it cannot be undermined by questioning divine authority. If you reject the biblical God, religious ethics collapses entirely. It has no foundation beyond obedience to imaginary commands. But if you reject the biblical God and understand the true nature of reality, Spinoza's ethics remains intact. It is grounded in observable facts about human nature, in rational understanding of cause and effect, in clear comprehension of what actions promote or diminish human power and understanding. The Church has always feared this possibility. that humans might discover they do not need God to be moral, that ethics can stand on rational foundation, that virtue can be understood and practiced without supernatural threats or promises. Because once humans realize this, the Church loses its primary claim to social necessity. If morality does not require religious authority, then what purpose does religious authority serve? The answer, from Spinoza's perspective, is none. Religious institutions exist to perpetuate themselves, to maintain power over populations kept ignorant and afraid, to preserve hierarchies that benefit those at the top. This is not to say that everyone in religious institutions acts from cynical self-interest. Many believers are sincere. Many clergy genuinely wish to help others. Many religious people live ethically and contribute to human welfare. But the system itself, the structure of religious authority claiming special access to divine truth, this system operates to maintain power regardless of individual intentions. And this system depends fundamentally on a lie, that God is the supernatural being described in Scripture, rather than the infinite substance identical with nature. Spinoza paid dearly for revealing this truth. Excommunicated from the Jewish community at age 23, he lived the rest of his life in relative isolation, supporting himself by grinding lenses, publishing most of his radical ideas only after death. He was offered academic positions and financial support on condition that he soften his views, that he make peace with religious authorities, that he present his philosophy in ways less threatening to established power. He refused every compromise. He chose truth over comfort, intellectual integrity over social acceptance, genuine knowledge over convenient belief. His example poses a question to everyone who encounters his thought. What do you value more, comfortable illusion or difficult truth? Will you continue believing what you were taught because it feels safe, because it provides easy answers, because questioning it requires effort and courage? Or will you pursue understanding regardless of where it leads, accepting that reality owes you no consolation, that truth serves no master, that genuine knowledge often contradicts cherished belief? Most people choose comfort. They prefer the familiar God of Scripture to the impersonal God of nature. They want to believe in personal immortality rather than accepting dissolution back into infinite substance. They desire cosmic justice rather than recognizing the moral indifference of natural processes. They crave meaning bestowed by divine purpose rather than meaning they must create for themselves. This is understandable. It is human, but it is not compatible with genuine knowledge. Spinoza offers no comfort, but he offers something more valuable: the possibility of understanding reality as it actually exists. He shows that you can know the true nature of God by studying nature itself, that you can develop genuine ethics without supernatural commands, that you can live meaningfully without cosmic purpose, that you can be free by understanding necessity rather than chasing the illusion of uncaused will. He demonstrates that truth, however harsh, liberates more fully than any comforting lie. The God of the Bible is not the true creator because the true creator is not separate from creation. The infinite substance that constitutes reality does not stand outside the world, crafting it according to plan, intervening according to will. The true divine is the world itself in its infinite totality, the eternal necessity expressing itself in all forms of existence. You are not the creature of this God. You are an expression of this God. Everything is. And understanding this truth, really grasping it intellectually and emotionally, changes everything. It changes how you understand yourself, no longer a soul trapped in sinful flesh, but a natural being whose thoughts and actions are themselves divine expressions. It changes how you understand others, no longer souls sorted into categories of saved and damned, but fellow expressions of infinite substance, equally divine in their being. It changes how you understand existence, no longer a temporary trial leading to eternal reward or punishment, but the only reality there is, valuable in itself without needing justification by reference to any other realm. This understanding does not make life easier. In some ways, it makes life harder because it removes consoling fictions, but it makes life more honest. It permits you to face reality without the constant cognitive dissonance of maintaining beliefs contradicted by observation. It allows you to pursue knowledge without fear that truth might undermine faith. It enables you to live according to your nature rather than constantly fighting natural impulses declared sinful by religious authority. It offers the freedom of intellectual integrity. The Church hid this truth, not because it was false, but because it was dangerous. Dangerous to religious authority, dangerous to political hierarchy justified by divine mandate, dangerous to the comfortable assumption that humans are special creations rather than natural beings. The truth Spinoza revealed threatens every institution that claims special access to divine will, every authority that demands obedience based on supernatural justification, every belief system that requires supernatural explanations for natural phenomena. But in the 21st century, you have access to knowledge that makes Spinoza's insights undeniable. You understand that the universe is billions of years old, that life evolved through natural processes, that the brain produces consciousness, that prayers show no measurable effects beyond placebo, that natural disasters follow physical laws rather than divine punishment. You have evidence that confirms what Spinoza argued on purely philosophical grounds. Nature operates according to its own necessity without requiring supernatural intervention or guidance. Yet many people still cling to the biblical God, still believe in personal divine attention, still expect supernatural intervention, still organize their lives around obedience to imaginary cosmic commands. Why? Not because evidence supports these beliefs, not because reason demands them, but because they are familiar, because they were taught in childhood, because abandoning them requires facing uncomfortable truths about existence. Because most people prefer inherited belief to independent thought, comfortable fiction to difficult reality, easy answers to genuine understanding. You must choose which path you will follow. Will you continue accepting what you were taught, living according to religious traditions you never questioned, believing in a God modeled after human political authority? Or will you pursue genuine knowledge, study nature to understand its true character, recognize that God and nature are identical? Will you remain in the comfortable prison of conventional belief, or will you step into the harsh light of philosophical truth? This is not merely an intellectual question. It determines how you live, what you value, how you understand your place in existence. It shapes whether you spend your life trying to please an imaginary cosmic judge or understanding your own nature and acting according to it. It influences whether you see other humans as fellow souls in need of salvation or as fellow natural beings deserving respect and compassion. It affects whether you approach the world with fear of divine punishment or with wonder at natural complexity. Spinoza lived his philosophy completely. He accepted poverty over compromise, isolation over social acceptance, truth over comfort. He showed that it is possible to live without religious consolation, to face existence honestly, to find meaning in understanding rather than obedience, to be free through knowledge rather than through faith. His life is evidence that humans can flourish without the biblical God, that morality does not require supernatural commands, that courage and integrity are possible without hope of eternal reward. The truth the Church hid is simple. You do not need them. You do not need priests to access the divine because you are already an expression of divine substance. You do not need scripture to understand God because God is nature and nature can be studied directly. You do not need religious authority to be moral because ethics emerges from understanding human nature and what genuinely promotes human flourishing. You do not need the Church at all, and they have always known this. That is why they fought so hard to suppress Spinoza's thought. That is why they declared him the most dangerous man in Europe. That is why they banned his books, cursed his name, warned against his philosophy for centuries. But truth cannot be suppressed forever. Ideas, once released, propagate regardless of institutional opposition. Spinoza's philosophy survived censorship and condemnation to become foundational to modern thought. His insights influenced the Enlightenment, shaped modern biblical criticism, contributed to scientific worldviews, and continue to offer an alternative to both religious dogma and simplistic materialism. The truth he revealed remains truth. The God of the Bible is a human invention. The true God is identical with nature, and genuine knowledge liberates more fully than any comforting belief. Now you must decide what you will do with this knowledge. Will you dismiss it as dangerous philosophy? Too radical to accept? Too threatening to cherished beliefs? Will you acknowledge its truth but continue living as if you did not know it, compartmentalizing your understanding to avoid difficult changes? Or will you allow this knowledge to transform how you think, how you live, how you understand your existence? The choice is yours. But you cannot unhear what you have heard. You cannot unknow what you now know. The comfortable certainties of conventional belief have been revealed as human inventions. Reality has been shown to be quite different from what you were taught. This is the moment of decision. Every person who genuinely understands Spinoza's insight faces this moment. The moment when you must choose between inherited belief and independent thought, between comforting fiction and difficult truth, between the slavery of obedience and the freedom of understanding. Most people retreat to familiar beliefs, unable to bear the harsh light of philosophical truth. Some few step forward into genuine knowledge, accepting its demands, embracing its freedom, living according to reason rather than tradition. Which will you choose? What matters more to you, truth or comfort? Will you be free or will you be safe? Will you think for yourself or will you continue accepting what others tell you to believe? These questions have no easy answers, but they are the questions that matter. They are the questions Spinoza asked himself and answered with his life. They are the questions he now poses to you through his philosophy. They are the questions you must answer through your choices, your actions, your commitment or lack thereof to genuine understanding. The biblical God is not the true creator. This is not speculation. This is not opinion. This is demonstrable truth for anyone willing to think clearly and honestly about the nature of existence. The God who demands worship, who commands obedience, who punishes and rewards, who intervenes in the world, who has intentions and makes choices. This God is a human projection, a cosmic version of earthly authority, an invention serving human purposes. The true God is nature itself, infinite substance eternally expressing its own necessity, requiring nothing, commanding nothing, being everything. Understanding this distinction is the beginning of wisdom. Living according to this understanding is the achievement of freedom. What will you do now that you know this truth? Will you share it with others, risking their opposition and condemnation as Spinoza did? Will you keep it to yourself, understanding privately while conforming publicly? Will you reject it despite its truth, preferring comfortable belief to difficult knowledge? Your choice reveals what you value, what you truly believe, who you actually are beneath the layers of social conditioning and inherited tradition. The church wanted you never to hear these ideas. They wanted you to live and die believing in the biblical God, obeying religious authority, accepting their interpretations as divine truth. They wanted to control your thoughts, your actions, your understanding of reality itself. But you have now encountered the truth they tried to hide. You have been shown that the emperor has no clothes, that religious authority rests on nothing more substantial than your willingness to believe their claims. What you do with this knowledge determines whether you will live as a free person or remain in voluntary spiritual slavery. Leave your thoughts below. Share what you truly believe about God, about nature, about truth. Do you have the courage to question what you were taught? Can you face existence without supernatural consolation? Will you pursue understanding wherever it leads? The conversation continues in the comments, where honest inquiry meets inherited belief, where reason confronts tradition, where individuals must decide for themselves what they will accept as true. And if this exploration of forbidden ideas speaks to something in you, if you value the pursuit of genuine knowledge over comfortable illusion, then subscribe and join others who choose difficult truth over easy belief. The journey toward understanding is lonely, but you need not walk it entirely alone.